Thank you. So, thank you for joining me on Can I Ask the Question? Today, our guest is Dr. Corrin Elmore, PhD, clinical psychologist. And we've had this great conversation regarding mental wellness and self care. And so, as we dug deeper into the conversation, I shared with you recently how I had lost weight due to an office visit. And the doctor was telling me all this good stuff to keep me healthy, but at the same time, he was telling me that I would have to take this medicine for the rest of my life. And so it turned into Charlie Brown's grandmother, teacher, someone speaking this unforeign language to me. And I started to check out of the appointment in my mind.
Mhm.
And I saw other things, my family, my health, um, how long would I live? But what was the narrative that I could change? And at that moment, I realized that there were some things that I had to look at, explore, de- dig deeper into, and
Yes.
unravel why was I looking like a chipmunk? Because there is a picture that I took. Yes, yes, I brought it home to my husband and said, "Why'd you let me get like this?" And his response was, "Well, you look happy." How I look happy looking like Alvin and the Chipmunk with cashews and pistachios all in my face. But I was in charge of that. And I believe and I am grateful that God has blessed me with this temple, but it is also my responsibility to take care of this temple. So as
Mhm.
we address mental wellness and self-care, but before we do that, Dr. Corinne, if you please could introduce yourself with a bio, because I stated before, I never want to overlook anything that you have
Yes,
accomplished and who you are, if you may.
absolutely. So, I'm a clinical psychologist. My background is in family therapy, so doing therapy with couples and families, and then kids. And right now, I work as a consultant in a pediatric clinic for the military families. And so I just provide consultation regarding behavioral health with pediatric families and kids. And it's my passion. I love it. I love working with kids and families. And I also do a lot of work with advocacy, so advocating for increased services for kids in low income areas and underserved populations.
Mm. And then we're going to also discuss that how this mental wellness and self care has affected areas of disparity, families
Yeah,
in areas of disparity due to the pandemic. So I would
yeah,
love to circle back around that at the end. So I have posed this question to many. We've received questions that have come out from our listening and watching audience, and they want to know, what is mental wellness? What does that have to do with us on a daily basis?
yes. So we're hearing all these terms being thrown out: mental wellness, behavioral health, mental health, wellness. And it's like, what is it? And so mental wellness is really the process of investing in yourself to help your mental health. So, mental health is kind of a state that you can be in. So, just think like your physical health. So, with your physical health, you could have a cold that day, or maybe another day you're feeling fine. And so, it kind of fluctuates based on what's going on. But your mental wellness is the process you do to keep yourself healthy. If that
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
happy. And so then how do we merge self-care into the overall juncture of our mental wellness?
Yeah, so if you want to think of mental health kind of at the top and something that can fluctuate based on our circumstances, and then mental wellness as the process that can help our mental health. Self care is kind of an act that you can do as part of your mental wellness process. So, self care would be things you could do like saying, you know what, today I'm tired and I'm not going to be able to make it to go out to get some wine with my friends tonight because I'm taking care of myself. But really, mental wellness is the whole process of, do you do this on a regular basis, not just one time saying no.
Mm. So that does have to kind of come into play what we would really realize what self-care. One lady shared, well, I go get my nails done every 2 weeks. And I was like, well, maybe that's maintenance more so than care. I was under
Yeah,
the impression that care was we know when to pull the shades down and turn off the light and like, okay, I'm done for today and phone off.
yeah,
I'm checking out for today. So
Well,
that's what I kind of
they
thought.
can both be self-care. So, like, for example, for me personally, going to get my nails done is an act of physical care, but it's not self-care for me because I don't find it relaxing. It's
Mm.
something else I have to do, another task,
Another task.
something I got to keep up with. So for me, it's not really that much of a self-care, but it does help keep up my appearance. But for some people, that's the time where they get to go and kind of relax and zone out and feel cared for. So then for them, that is self-care. So it's really personal, but just doing the acts is not really necessarily having mental wellness because you have to have a plan of how you do it regularly. And I think that's the key that a lot of us don't really focus on.
I like that how you said there has to be a plan that we have in action to go forth with it and making sure that we're well taken care of. And I noticed that with the weight loss, eating different. I didn't go on a diet. I didn't participate in any delivery foods that came from an outside source that was prepared. It was now my state of mind that I had to change. However, my
Mm.
wonderful husband, we eat totally different now. So for his vision, I'm not getting enough, but from my point of view, I was getting enough. So I had to really explain to him for me to stay well mentally, physically, I need you to
Exactly.
respect that maybe I'm not going to eat this whole hunk of steak that you have prepared. Maybe I'll just eat half of it. And so that I think that was a way or a reckoning where I had to understand, oh, what you are in charge of this narrative of taking care of yourself mentally and physically.
Yes.
So it did shine a different light for me that I had never thought of before.
And I think all the different topics you're doing, which is why I'm so grateful to be a part of this, they
Mhm.
all interrelate. So if you're not feeling good about yourself mentally, it's hard to do things like physical activity because you might be feeling depressed or you might be feeling sad or not really like you're important at that moment. And so you might not want to do things like have to plan your meals. But then also, if you're not eating well, you might feel more depressed, what makes it hard for you to eat well. So it all
Right.
works together.
Yeah, that is so true because, as you stated, we recently went on a trip, and in my mind, I kept thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to ride all the rides. I know I'm going to get tired," and so I just started playing out the narrative even before we arrived. But then I said, "No, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to close this park out," and I did
Yeah.
well. I mean, I didn't complain. I was really impressed with myself, but it was because I had lost the weight, not just a physical weight but also the mental weight that I wasn't
Yes.
holding on to also. So there was a freedom, a sense of freedom for me, even on the smaller things as you stated.
Yes. So you have to change your self-talk for yourself to decide, okay, so when you got that explanation from your doctor, it could have been like, okay, this is the end. There's no point in
Right.
trying. I'm going to be on medication the rest of my life. And that's kind of the self talk we do that relates to our mental wellness. But you could also change that narrative and say, okay, this is my opportunity. I get to do something different. It's going to be better. And so that makes you more encouraged, which can help you actually lose things like physical weight, but like you said, mental weight.
Mental weight. And so, as you had stated earlier, because now it's now my body. So we will have a doctor coming on, and she will be speaking about what we should be eating and not, and the intake process. But also, it went to a spiritual. It went more to my daily, devotion and worship, and making sure that I'm not rushed out of the house because I felt that when I was rushing, I really wasn't processing what I was going to do. And then I arrived at my destination with still that rush spirit. And so
Yeah.
again, it took me back like, okay, calm down, take your time. And like you said, what is the action for today? What is the plan? And then mapping it out. And if I can't fit it in, being okay to tell a person or organization or a group, I can't make it today because it'll be
Yep.
overwhelming. So saying no has
Yep.
now become my new mantra. No, 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 can't come. No.
Hey, and you feel okay with doing it. And I
Yeah.
think you're really hitting on how mindfulness kind of plays into all of this. So when we talk about having a plan for what you want to do today or not being rushed out of the house and not having to react, That's really being mindful about what's going to happen today. What can I do today? How am I feeling? What energy do I have to do these things? And when you're being rushed out, you don't have time to be mindful. You're just reacting. So if I'm just feeling hungry, I might just pick up this bag of chips. And that's what it is. I didn't get to think about it. Or, if someone's right in front of me and they're like, come to this event, I'm like, okay, because you're right in front of me. Instead of being mindful about, okay, am I at a mental place where I can do this event?
Right.
Am I at a place where eating these chips are going to make me feel better or worse? But based on where your mental health is, you might have the capacity to be more mindful at that time or not.
Right. And so, do you think, and just to be transparent and open, that as I would say, as a Black woman, mental wellness was never discussed in our household. And the only time someone ever discussed that or even approached the subject was when someone was depressed or was hospitalized, or as I grew up, we were told they just had bad nerves at that time and
Yeah,
just
nerves,
let them rest.
nerves.
Yeah, the
Yep,
nerves. So
yep,
it's like their nerves. Like that was just a statement, and you knew to back off, leave that person alone. And
yeah.
so, have we progressed any, or are we kind of on the way up to really understand that if I'm not feeling well or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, to vocalize it, to say it to my close family and friends that okay, maybe I can't do all of this right now. I need your help. Or it doesn't
Yeah.
mean I'm weak. It just means I need to rest.
Yeah. And so I again trying to be positive and what's the self-talk I can say about Black women, about where we are in our progress. I really do think that Black women are just recently, and I would talk about later how I think the pandemic helped with that, but just recently being allowed to say, okay, this is too much for me.
Mm.
Whereas I would say growing up, when you see Black women, I grew up the daughter of a pastor and the granddaughter of a pastor. So Black women being like, okay, we have to do this. We have to be at church at this time. I have to take my kids. They have to look great. I
Right.
have to look
Perfect.
great.
Not
I have
great.
to work
Perfect.
out. Yes, perfect. Exactly. And if you don't, then that means something's wrong with you. But
There's a
it's
crack.
not about, there wasn't even a talk about how is this affecting me emotionally or what is going to be something helpful for me. It was, as a Black woman, how can I support everyone else's role? And if I can't, then that means something's wrong with me. And I think today that Black women are advocating for themselves more now. We have a lot more equality in terms of spouse relationships, and then a lot of households headed by single women. And so I think there's a lot more space to be like, hey, this is what I can do and not do. But I still think we're way far behind with some other races in the grace we've been allowed to have with I'm not mentally well right now. And that's okay for me to say.
Mhm. And it's not a bad thing to say that. And so I think the stigma was if you say, I'm not mentally well today, or I need to check out today, it meant that there was something wrong, that there's a crack, something, the foundation is getting ready to crumble. But I think now because we can vocalize it, as you stated, and during this pandemic, more women have come out and there's more groups and more organizations that can assist with that. I think there should be a freedom, almost a banner that says it's okay to just put taking a day off with no explanation or the
Yes.
feeling like there's something wrong. So,
And that's something that you did positive. So that's not weakness, that's a strength. You knew that you needed a day off and you took it.
mhm,
That being a strength. And I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's starting to be more open. And when there's not as many Black psychologists and therapists as there are other races, but the Black therapists and psychologists they are tend to be Black women. And so I do think that we're getting more open to this space and having people to advocate on our behalf. Black men just now starting to really be able to talk about mental health, just like you talked about weakness and strength. But I think we're progressing.
progressing. And that's a wonderful thing. So if someone is out there, and I mean this wholeheartedly, they don't really want to say anything to their family. Maybe they don't want to go to their church. And maybe they don't even want to go to their HMO. Are there other organizations that are out there that maybe there's a 1-800 number that they could call or to reach out to? So is it like a national number that someone could call?
Yeah, so there's a national suicide prevention number and it's a 1-800 number, but also they recently changed it to a shortened number. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but a lot of my patients, they don't really want to call national suicide prevention because if they say that, then it means like, oh, I'm
There's
doing
something
so
wrong.
bad that I want to commit suicide. So one that I really like to use, which I think is a great resource for everyone, is something called the crisis text line. And so there's this number, it's 741-741, and you just text the word home. And there's people volunteering who have gone through their own mental health stuff. And then there's also licensed counselors. And you can text them anytime, day or night, just talking about what's going on. It doesn't have to be, I want to commit suicide. It doesn't have to be,
Mm-hmm.
it it can be something, it can be anything. And you can write to them. And then when you're done, you just say stop and it stops. And so
Mm-hmm.
that I found is a really good resource because you're not admitting anything. There's no paper trail. It's just you saying, hey, I need to talk about this. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. What do you think I should do?
That's a good point. That's a really good point, and thank you for that resource. So often, another question that came in from our listening audience, they wanted to know in certain communities since the pandemic, have you seen a rise in mental wellness concerns, or are there
Yes.
help or there groups and organizations? I think you kind of hit
So
on that one. Mhm.
I think the pandemic really slowed us down to see we're struggling. A lot of us are struggling. We've really given in to this American dream. I have to go to work. I have to make money. I have to look good. I have to post this on Instagram. My kids have to be great. And we were just operating on autopilot. And I think once we got slowed down with the pandemic, we got to see, hey, I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I don't have it to give. And so, what we saw was a rise in looking out for mental health resources, which was great. That
Mhm.
means people were more open to it. But I think that we also saw that people didn't have access. So, we saw the disparity and the cracks in our system. So, as a Black person, if you don't have certain insurance, or if you don't have a job that gives you insurance and you're underpaid, you might not even have the resources to go to a therapist. And then the therapist, because they were getting so overwhelmed with the amount of clients, might be switching to private pay. So now we're not even taking insurance because as the therapist, I don't have the energy to submit all this stuff
So
to
all this paperwork.
insurance.
So kind of like a
So
cycle.
it's cycled. The therapist is
Oh,
exhausted, the person is exhausted. We're all doing the best we can, which I think really hit on some of the things that were already there. But I think the upside is that we were slowed down enough to say, hey, I can't keep sustaining like this and not doing anything about my mental health. And sometimes you have to hit a low to be able to figure that out.
figure it out, right? Just step away. And
Yeah.
that is why I also always say, your circle should be a little small, not too big, because you can't please everyone, and you're trying to go everywhere and do everything, and it's exhausting. It is overwhelming.
Yeah. And I can speak personally. So for me as a psychologist, some people's jobs kind of slowed down during the pandemic. Mine had a huge uptick. And so,
Mm,
because the pandemic is a crisis, right? So, even if you never had any behavioral health or mental health issues in the past, being in a situation like a pandemic, which is scary, can
mm,
bring up some symptoms you never had before. So, we had people who never were depressed, never had attention problems, now doing virtual school, or parents having to be with their kids all day, now
yeah.
starting to have anger issues, now starting to have depression, wondering if they have ADHD. And then on the other end, the people who already had behavioral health diagnoses, they don't have access to the resources they had. So we were seeing things be worse. So even at the baseline, people who never struggled before were having some. Then the people who already had it worse.
Are going to,
So
yes.
I was seeing this constantly, and because of the pandemic, not able to see my clients in person, which really helps to energize me to kind of feed off of their energy, especially with kids. And so I was starting to becoming drained from all the things I was hearing and how helpless I felt in being able to help them. And so even though I'm a psychologist, I was thinking, what's the problem? I'm a psychologist, nothing's going on. I don't have anything stressful. Why do I not feel like getting up to do this? But we were draining each other. And so I
Mm,
had to make a hard decision and talk to my boss and say, you know what? If I have to keep going at this pace, I'm not going to be able to do this job much longer that I love.
mhm.
So I need a break. And so I was able to talk with my job and take a 3 month stress leave, which is
Mhm.
not
Great.
available, that people don't know is actually available. So as an employee, we have the right to FMLA, which is medical leave. You're entitled to 12 weeks a year. Okay. Most people don't know that. I thought you had to like have a serious medical diagnosis like
Medical problem.
cancer
Yeah.
or have a baby. I didn't know stress could count as that. And so I found that out and I took that opportunity and it was so great for me. I got to really reset, think about why I love this stuff, and have the energy to give it to my patients who really needed me.
Hmm. I like what you said, you hit reset. So it allowed you to go back to the foundation. Why did I go to college for this? Why did I study this particular field? And, what was that thirst, that drive that brought me here? But then this pandemic, I call it the pandemic, came and it just put this black cloud on everything. However, some feel that the pandemic is gone, but we're seeing the residuals and the aftermath. So it's still somewhat ever present. And so now we have to learn how to deal with it, but also prepare ourselves in the event something similar comes to pass like this too. And so,
Yeah,
like you said earlier, this has brought out so many resources, so many groups and organizations for us to be able to, go into and learn and then look around and see I'm not by myself. I'm not the only person
yeah.
feeling this way. And I think that's the first step, as you have stated earlier, to be able to vocalize it. Like, I don't feel well today, or I just want to stay home. And and
And
I
know
and
that
I
it's
laugh
okay.
about this. It's funny, but it wasn't funny. I remember when all my girls are now adults and they're grown and they're out the house, and it was a weekend. I had nothing to do. Like, I didn't have to be here for this or that. It was just there wasn't anything at church. There was no sports event. There was no organizational event. It was like a weekend, and I woke up and I thought, wait, what am I supposed to do today? And I thought, oh, there isn't anything to do today. And I had to find something to do that day because
Yes,
I couldn't turn my brain off from being so energized, always going, going, going.
yes.
And that could be a burnout too if you don't recognize it. Like, stop. It's okay to just stay home,
Yeah,
do
I think
nothing.
that is exactly for me. I think that's what really hit me on the pandemic. I'm an extrovert. I work with kids. I have a lot of energy. And so I'm constantly just doing stuff, doing stuff, doing stuff. And so I actually get drained not having anything to do. Because I'm
Mm.
like, what do I do with
What do
myself?
I do
I
now
don't
with this
know. I don't know how to
energy?
just sit here. And so it was hard with the
Yeah.
pandemic, but it helped me a lot. Like I can actually spend time alone and be okay with it. Whereas before I'm like, I need to do this, I need to do this. And so I was getting drained by just not having stuff to do. And so I think it forced you to kind of figure out what are those areas that you're just not that good at or haven't practiced so that you can kind of learn, okay, I need to learn how to sit alone. I need to learn how to be still. Where some people I know were like, hey, I'm an introvert, but this is too much alone time. Okay, I need to start finding a community online that I can interact with.
That I could interact with. And it was
Yeah.
so cute because one day, Lauren, Mark and I was moving and we were preparing to move and we were all done. And she was so sweet. She asked me, she said, are you guys going to be okay alone? And I just started laughing because I thought we were alone before you were born. So
Right.
we
Right.
did have a life before.
But that's all she's seen is you guys
But
just
that's
putting
all
all
she's
that on
ever
her.
known. And it was just
Yeah.
so cute because in her mind, there's something missing to this equation. Now they're going off, the two of them by themselves, to start this new life. Are you going to be okay? And it was just so heartwarming to me that she even thought of that.
Yeah. That
But
means
I
you
was like,
raised her
what if
well.
I would have said, no, I'm not going to be. You want to come with
Yeah. What
me?
were you gonna do?
What are you going to do? Come on, stay with me. But that's
Yes.
just her mindset was so beautiful to me that I had to look at it like, oh wow, we are starting a new life. It's just the two of us on a new journey. So that was another thing that I had to really look at, our direction and what we were going to do. But through it all, this is going to be great. I'm so glad you came on a part of the journey for us. What initially was going to happen, it was going to be 30 days of just discussing what took place. But as I started to speak to others, they were like, "No, I have a question regarding that." And then our last
Mm,
well, I mean, it'll continue on, but for September, our last Wednesday is going to be on Money Matters, because if you're off mentally, not mentally, but if you're feeling overwhelmed financially, that could affect your mental wellness
yeah,
and,
yeah.
bring up another stress factor. So, I thought, I didn't
It's
even think about
all interrelated.
it's so
Yes,
deep, and it gets deeper.
yes.
So that's why we have to call the expert. So you can ask me the question, but I'll go out and find an expert for you that has the
Yes.
answer. So
Resourceful.
my last one that kind of it kind of stuck with me. Does the lack of self care, so if I'm not providing that self care for myself, does it affect my mental wellness?
Yes.
And is it a visual, or is it something that I'm going to feel on the inside? Like, when will I know that
Good.
it's time to check in, to stop, get off the wheel for a minute and just stop? How would I know that?
That's a great point. So I think the whole kind of theme we've been talking about is being conscious about what's going on with you. So a lot of times we don't know that we need some self-care, that we're burned out until we're just completely depleted. But if we're conscious about, okay, let me sit here and think, when I'm feeling mentally healthy, what does that look like for me? When I'm not feeling mentally healthy, what does that look like for me? Because if you don't know that, it's gonna you're gonna have to wait until you're feeling really bad to even know you need to do some self-care. And at that point, you might not even have enough energy to do some of those things. And so I think being conscious of what your states are and what you need. So like me, knowing I'm an extrovert. I get a lot of energy off of being with other people. So for me, I need to be around other people. However, I also need to make sure there's a balance. And when I'm with other people, I always have a break to spend some time by myself. I didn't know that until the pandemic. I had to learn that. And so I think one of my issues with the self care and wellness community is that a lot of it has been talked about in ways that I would consider selfish. And that's
Selfish.
not the same as self care.
Right.
So, your mental health is your state of being at that time. Your mental wellness is the process of how you make that mental health better. But the self care is the little acts you do to kind of feed it along the way. And so, you'll hear some people say, well, it's self care. I had to cancel on my plans last minute because it's my self care. And I'm like, I get that, but it was also rude of you to not consider how that would affect someone else. So if
Right.
you were conscious about it before you would have said yes, you would have said, you know what? I'm going to have a late day that day, so I'm not going to be able to make it. And so I think the next step in self care that people should really look at is, how can I be the best version of myself? Again, financially, physically, exercise. And then when I'm not feeling it, what do I need for myself to feel better? And then also, how can I be the best I can so that I can help others? And if that's not part of our wellness and our self care, you're still going to feel depleted at the end of it. And I think that's the part that is missing a lot of the
I love that. I so love that. I love you. Thank you so much. That was perfect. Somebody call Oprah.
time.
Let's get this on the own channel. This
Yes.
was amazing. So
Yeah.
before we leave, because I know you have something planned, so we'll keep it a secret. It's relaxation and self care.
Relaxing. It's self care for myself.
Yes. But is there any special nugget that you just want to drop out there to inspire? My vision, what I believe God has blessed me with this. So the "can I ask the question" used to get me in trouble at work all the time, because the supervisor, it just wasn't clear to me what she was saying. So I always would say, "Billy, can I ask a question?" And I think after a couple of questions, I got on her nerves. But it's still in
Get
my soul
honest.
to ask a question.
Right.
So, with this said, my prayer is that this information touches someone who watches or listens, that they'll understand that they're okay. It's okay to stop and get off for now and then and take care of yourself. But if you
Yes.
wanted just to impart something to someone to let them know that it's okay, but to more to motivate them, it's okay to be different
Yeah.
too. And say,
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do for our planet, for your community, and for yourself is to think that you deserve enough time to think about your needs. So instead of having to kind of pick up scraps from your needs here and there, I would really encourage everyone to take some time and say, what does it look like when I feel mentally healthy? Okay, I know what it looks like now. What are the things that have helped me to get there? And how can I balance those things out? I think a real key is that sometimes we can feel discouraged about the fact that our mental health is not good, which makes your mental health worse, and then you feel more discouraged. So if you can just set aside some time to say, what does it look like when I'm feeling good? What are the things that get me there? And if I can't do it every time, it's okay. I think everything else just works itself out.
mm, I love you, Dr. Corinne. Thank you so much. So this
Thank you for
was
having me.
this is awesome. So as you know, you're the first on this particular journey. So you kicked it out, and I'm so excited. Our next guest will be Dr. Barbara Nash, and she will be speaking about high blood pressure, diabetes in the Black community, and how she has seen a spike recently through the pandemic and since, and that fearful that it's not tapering off, as many think that the numbers are down. No, they're not. They are up. So please,
Mm,
for all of you watching and listening, continue to stay safe and take care of yourself. By taking care of yourself, you're also taking care of others. So be mindful of
yes.
that. So again, Dr. Corinne, I thank you so much. I love
Thank
you.
you for
Mwah.
having me, Dr. Charles.
Yeah.
I
All right.
appreciate it.
So thank you until we see each other again. Everyone out there, I do not care if you feel like you're in the valley or if you're on the mountaintop. You are victorious in every step that you take. Continue to tell
Amen.
yourself, I am victorious. Bye bye.
Bye.